This Honourable House is now in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Head 31, Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology.
Thank you. Honourable Senator.
Chair, I do ask for permission for my team to join me as well.
Permission granted.
Permission.
Beverly.
Mr. Chairman, Head 31, Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, in the amount of $187,788,520. And 20.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, before I invite you to give your opening comments, let me outline the rules to you, and let me welcome you and your officers to this chamber, and let me outline the rules which govern this debate. You are allowed 10 minutes to give your opening remarks. Once you have given them, the floor will be open to honourable members to ask their questions. You have 5 minutes to respond to each question, or you can designate the member of your team who you wish to respond to the particular question. The member of your team must first give their name and their position within the ministry, and they are given 3 minutes to answer the question. Honourable members are quite aware of the procedure. They have gone through this several times, but we will just reiterate for your, so that you would understand the process, the full process as well. Honourable members indicate that they wish to speak based on the raising of their tile, which I would recognize. And I invite honourable members to ensure that I recognize your tile so that we can move smoothly along. You know the process. And I also let you know that you are given one question at the outset, and then you would have 3 follow-up questions pertaining to the first question that you've asked. Once you've done that, I will then move on to the members of the next honorable member based on how I have seen the titles being raised. I trust we are clear on that, and therefore I now move to the honorable senator to give his opening remarks.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. I'm sure my colleagues might chuckle to themselves because I certainly never imagined myself sitting down in the middle of this chamber, certainly on the sidelines as a visitor, but I am honored by the trust placed in myself and the support of the colleagues to be able to get to this point. I want to express that what we present today is a reflection of the weight of the responsibility that we understand the ministry has to transforming Barbados and the vision as set out by Cabinet and the government around Vision 2030. Barbados stands obviously at a decisive moment of our national story, of the world with all that's going on, quite frankly. And all around us, we see that economies are being reshaped at this incredible pace by technology, science, and innovation. And quite frankly, it's probably the most unprecedented speed in human history. But the good news is that nations that were once small players are now becoming global leaders in ways that they couldn't previously imagine. But you have to choose to become a leader in that space. You have to choose to build institutions and infrastructure and choose to have the imagination necessary to compete in this new space. And so for us, we see it not as a moment of threat, although there are valid concerns, but really a moment of opportunity. The Ministry of Innovation, Industry and Science and Technology has been entrusted to help and lead our nation through this transition. And we understand the weight of this responsibility, and we're excited by it. The task is nothing less than to help Barbados leap from its current economic structures, which has served us well, but to go to the next stage of development, we must do more. We must be more digitally innovative. We must advance industry. We must build resilient prosperity. That is the task that we have been set. And so today, the reflection of our estimate submission for this year is really a reflection of a 4-year plan of building towards that, with the first year, 2026, 27, what we're calling the year of better. The vision is straightforward but ambitious. We intend for the ministry to be a catalyst in Barbados' leaping into the new economy, to become a premier service ministry that is digital first, innovative driven, and internationally benchmarked. We are guided by the broader mission to transform Barbados into a high-functioning digital society, and our strategy sets out a progression of institutional excellence of, as I previously stated, better in 26-27, good by 27-28, great by 28-29, and world-class by 2030. Our immediate focus then, as we drill in on this idea of better, is really being better at strategy, better at delivery, better at service, better at innovation, better at creating economic opportunities. We must become better at fast-tracking Barbados' emergence as a world-class, digitally advanced, innovative economy. And if we succeed, as we fully intend to, then the impact will be profound. What we presented to the estimates with the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister was an opportunity, we believe, to grow the economy over a period of time by $2-3 billion of new value previously not created. Through digital transformation, through industrial innovation, through investment attraction, we want to create high-quality new jobs, high-quality new exports, high-quality new investment opportunities, and productivity gains. We see this moment as a recognition of Barbados has been doing well for itself for a long period of time through traditional industries, tourism, finance, trade, and these sectors will remain vital. But we have a role, we believe, to not only transform these sectors to make them even more efficient and powerful, but to complement them with new engines of growth. The world economy is shifting towards digital platforms, advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, biotechnology, data-driven industries, and Barbados must understand its role in those areas and dominate in those spaces on the basis of our unique strengths. If we are to remain competitive, resilient, and become prosperous, we must build these digital and industrial foundations that allow our people and our businesses to thrive in this new market space. Now, to do that, we need to build the entity that's entrusted in doing those things to be the most digitally advanced, technologically advanced, scientifically advanced entity, not only just in Barbados. We believe we need to build MISS to become the most advanced in the Caribbean. And to do that, we have to understand the ministry's role, where it sits at the intersection between infrastructure, physical and digital, in security through digital security, cybersecurity, through the means of telecommunications, because all of our transactions and our ability to move the economy forward will rest on telecommunications infrastructure, to build the idea of innovative ecosystems that no longer rest in the royals of what is, but we can imagine what can be and optimize us to be the best versions of ourselves. Evolving our industrial policies and strategies to be makers of things and not just buyers and receivers of things. To evolve in new areas that we haven't fully yet conceived and must become dominant and self-aware in, such as data governance, and building out critical things that obviously our citizens want, and all of us want, quite frankly, around e-government services. But critically, while doing all those kind of fundamental things, we must also become a part of shaping the next wave and the future of emerging technologies. That is critical to how we think of the ministry's role in the development of the modern Barbados economy. However, when I started this role, and I'll be a little bit frank, maybe 80% of my time was spent on firefighting, on solving small IT-related issues. Not much time was, quite frankly, spent in the first instance around going after big strategic innovations and economic development. And the reality of the job that we have in this ministry is there's going to be a lot of that. So we're going to be able to create specific infrastructure, manage those things, because those are base requirements of our ministry, and we understand it. But while doing those fundamental things, we have to be able to create infrastructure that allows us to get to the big ticket items, to move the country forward, to do things that allow us to dream beyond what we can currently see. And so I'm happy to report, through cabinet approval, we have been given permission to expedite the transformation of MISS, to position us to be the cornerstone of the next phase of Barbados' national development, which is reflected both in the Barbados Labour Party's manifesto, as well as BERT 3.0 plan. And we're excited by this opportunity. Chair, the head 31 represents our financial requirement to deliver this 2026-2027 year of better strategy. It reflects MIS's intention of moving from a reactionary to a highly strategic entity. It reflects our firm intent to transform MIS from a ministry that merely maintains systems to one that builds the future. Being better for us means that we become a better technical advisor to the government, a better partner to businesses and innovators, a better project delivery organization, a better policy architect, a better driver of national economic development. This progress will not be measured only by our internal metrics. We operate to serve the public. So this will be measured by impact, by how long systems stay online, by digital services that the citizens now not only receive instantly, but they enjoy receiving, by new economic opportunities for emerging entrepreneurs, by creating new jobs that never existed before for young people, and people want to switch careers, by building innovative systems that attract global partnerships and investments. And to achieve this transformation, we're going to narrow in on 7 areas of specific focus. Area number 1 is really around strategy. The ministry is in a very unique space where I think it's, of course, I'll be personally biased, but I think it's probably the only ministry that straddles the full gamut of what you expect a government to manage. So from security, to policy, to investment, to infrastructure, to services, we do it all. And we need to be able to do that to a world-class standard. So the idea is to be globally benchmarked on the best in the world, but present that within our local nuance. And that's what we intend to do. We intend to build large-scale flagship initiatives, like our GIGA program that you will hear the CEO of BIDC speak a little bit more to, our next generation of accelerators around science and technology that you will hear our director of the Supernova Lab speak more to, by building complicated technological frameworks around open data sets and open API frameworks that you will hear some of our team members speak to, and building catalytical projects such as digital ID systems, advanced technology connectivity systems, building things like National Innovation Awards to spur on more indigenous innovation, building modernized infrastructure like data centers. All of these things will be the framework of what we'll be doing as part of our strategy.
Honourable Minister, you have 1 minute.
No problem. Thank you. So let me speed through then. Our other pillars, but I only have 7 minutes. Our other pillars of focus really then is around better governance. In addition to being a service provider, the reality is that we do manage a lot of the key legislative frameworks and requirements of operations of the government around telecommunications, around electric transactions, around cybersecurity, around data governance, and around, of course, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and blockchain. The reality is that we have to create a legislative modernization effort to get Barbados as a state to be enacted with the best quality of legislation in the world. Key to all of this, obviously, as well as a third component of our strategy is really around better investment. Although the sum requested by the ministry has increased, the reality is that the scale of investment required to allow Barbados to transform in the way we've described needs much more investment than the estimates could provide us. And the reality is that the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister were very pointed in explaining to us that we have to be builders of finding innovative ways of finding global and localized capital to drive the innovation that we need. So the intention is to start of the ministry through our agencies to be better drivers of new capital into Barbados. As described before, infrastructure is going to be a fundamental part of what we focus on. So not only physical infrastructure such as data centers and hardware that you require, but thinking of it, quite frankly, as digital infrastructure in a way that we've never thought of it before. Digital ID as infrastructure, AI as infrastructure, cloud storage as infrastructure. All of these are key components to what modernized states see themselves as. Not only tunnels or roads or bridges, but your industrial framework is built on top of your industrial infrastructure capacity. To wrap up, Mr. Chair, two other critical areas of focus will be first, the idea of driving better talent. The reality is the areas that we function in require the highest skill, highest paid talent on planet Earth. That's what scientists and technologists are. So the construct of how we attract talent to be able to do in these advanced work from Barbados has to evolve, and from the government has to evolve. We've created a framework that we believe that can drive in exciting talent from local, from regional, and from the world to do extraordinary things for Barbados to advance Barbados forward. Finally, Chair, I think the idea is fundamental to all of this is really the ministry has to provide better operations and be a better operating partner to its government colleagues as well as to the nation. How do we provide a way that we are reliable, a way that we are enjoyable to collaborate with, and a way that provides the country with confidence of what we're building going forward? Mr. Chair, I will go further as we during the discussions, but the idea is that fundamentally we are up for the challenge. We believe that we are in an exciting moment in the time of the history of our country, and we are ready to deliver what Barbados requires to get to the next stage. At the end, sorry. Mr. Chair, I ask that we move that Head 31 stand apart.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Minister, I want to thank you for the preamble presentation that you made to us. And it's very clear that you cannot be having a discussion about science and technology these days without two buzzwords: data centers and artificial intelligence. And you were clear on both of them. But I would like that you expand on your plans or opportunities, specifically for data centers in Barbados, and then we'll get into the concomitant result from artificial intelligence. But what opportunities or what plans do you have to be able to develop data centers, to start with, a data center in Barbados?
Thank you for the question. I'll also ask the CEO of BIDC to also tag into the question. But to start it off, I think it's fundamental for the public and everyone to understand that all the things that we enjoy, whether it's via a mobile phone app or on our computers or any digital interaction, needs to live on some infrastructure that is invisible but critical to the functioning of that service. And so it goes over a telecommunication line, it reaches a compute facility that allows the computation to happen to provide you that service. Whether you're taking a photo, whether you're saving a song, whether you're doing something that is much more, whether you're using ChatGPT, all of those things exist on data center infrastructure. And the reality is that we have underinvested in our infrastructure for a long period of time. We heavily rely on non-sovereign providers of those storage and compute capacity to be able to provide us with these key services that we have. With our ambition and the stated desire of the government to digitize the government, we need to, alongside the process of digitizing the government, have the infrastructure in place that allows us to be able to live on our services to live on top of, that our information is stored of, that these things become ours and we keep them in good stead, and they are not subject to any other person's or any other states, quite frankly, whims and fancies around our infrastructure. This is fundamental. The reality of this, however, is that this is expensive, right? You're talking about things that require high level of technological inputs that we don't make, that we have to import, that we have to source, and then skills to maintain and manage them that also are expensive, that we have to do it. Hence why quite a significant component of our budget is reflected around building those data centers. I'll ask the CEO of BIDC to go a little bit more specific around the first data center that we are going to be building out, which is in the parish of St. Andrew.
Thank you, Minister. So, yeah, speaker's on. Yeah. So the first data center will be located within what we consider the northern corridor.
Officer, before you get into your response,
Sorry,
you need
Mark
to give
Hill,
your name.
CEO
and-
of Export Barbados Investment Development Corporation. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So the first data center is earmarked to be developed within the northern corridor of St. Lucie, St. Peter, and particularly St. Andrew. Specifically in St. Andrew, we have a site at Greenland, which has pretty much a high degree of infrastructure already in place. It's a very secure location. So we've done some analysis on that site for a tier 3 and over location for a data center. So that digital infrastructure in that site will carry both AI compute, cloud services, and also green electricity. Because as you would know, compute requires high levels of electricity. So that location gives us enough space to be able to power the compute and to be able to scale from what we're starting off right now with a 100 kilowatt system, and then we're scaling that to a 15 megawatt data center whereby the initial 5 megawatts will primarily be owned and developed by government, and then opening up the additional megawattage to private investors. So in the Greenland zone, which we've already began doing the clearing the site and preparing, most of the infrastructure is in place and they're ready, and it's just primarily electrical infrastructure that we have to build in right now. So we've begun, and we anticipate a rapid deployment for that particular first layer of compute. Yes, Minister. Back over to you, Minister.
Thank you.
So thank you, Minister, but you did mention the green electricity, and I think you might want to expand on that, because as you said, rightly said, data centers, we call it power hungry. And data centers are very much power-hungry entities that need a lot of power. And if we're going to expand multiple data centers across Barbados, of course, it means that our consumption of electricity goes up. And of course, we don't want to consume excess amounts of electricity and then excess amounts of fossil fuel at the same time. because that defeats the purpose. So clearly, I agree with you that if we're going to be powering data centers, we need to power it with green electricity, but you may want to expand for the benefit of the country what exactly that is and how that does not increase the fossil fuel use and is a better way of generating electricity for data centers.
Thank you. So with the conversation of data centers, I've spent an inordinate time thinking of electricity in a way that I, quite frankly, previously didn't. And the reality is that you think of advanced infrastructure requirements that, one, do not put a tax burden on the country, and two, do not put an environmental burden on the country. So we had to design a framework that we believed, one, could be financed through not increasing any major difficulties on payers of tax in the country, quite frankly. And then two, we are an island who very much believes in our role in the overall mitigation of climate change and the climate crisis. Therefore, any advent into advanced compute had always had to be designed in our minds using high levels of green electricity. Barbados understands this, of course, through solar-powered electricity. The good news for us is that the quality of panels, the quality of technology, the advancement of it is that solar energy is actually much more cheaper than, and it's becoming step change cheaper, quite frankly, on an annualized basis, to be able to create high levels of new energy into the country's requirements. Added to that, of course, is that one of the sites that we've chosen has proximity to the ocean. So we actually are creating a series of experiments around generating energy from the ocean to be able to be powered into this green park. The CEO can go a little bit further into it regarding our advent into energy as well. CEO Hill?
Yeah. So as part of the overall GIGA framework, which means Green Industrialization Gateway Advantage, the data center sits at the foundational level of how we intend to deliver GIGA. So the green industrialization is underscored by the fact that, one, the green space, the green economy, constitute for $7 trillion opportunity globally. But Barbados positioning itself strategically means that we're using green inputs to deliver green outputs, and therefore give ourselves that niche within the overall global market. So as far as the electricity or the electrons is concerned, as Minister clearly pointed out, there are a number of different pathways that we're using to develop low-cost electrons, because industry cannot function without low-cost electrons. So we need to get electron costs as low as possible so that high-value systems can build on top of it. So we're looking at wave energy, two types of wave energy, both using the actual movement of the waves and OTEC. There's also the biomass, as the minister was articulating, because the Scotland District area is one of those areas that produce a high volume of biomass. Not only biomass coming shore with sargassum, but also biomass through roadside grass, agriculture, river tambourine. So we have a big opportunity to harvest twice. So we can harvest both the sun's energy at the solar level, and directly on the solar panels, we can also harvest biomass energy. And so the data center is designed around both platforms. So we're looking at installing 5 megawatts of PV panels at Greenland, backed with gigawatt storage over time, but we're starting with just 4 megawatts of storage to help feed the compute, but also we're installing just around 500 kilowatts of biomethane output. And all that means is that you're cutting the roadside grass at the side of the road, the stuff that NCC cut and collect. We can collect that grass, put it into the digesters, and the biomethane produces up to 500 kilowatt hours of output as a base load. And so therefore, what we're doing is using green technology to feed the data center to make sure that compute stands on its own, because it is the backbone of reindustrialization in this century. Now, industrialization has gone through 4 iterations so far. Industry 1.0, which is about mechanization. Then Industry 2.0, which is scale on mechanization, is about mass production. And then Industry 3.0, which is about automation at a basic level. And then 4.0, which is high-level automation resting on top of the internet and resting on top of digital infrastructure. Now we're moving towards Industry 5.0, which is moving from just automation to autonomy. So therefore, machines are thinking, machines are operating independently, and therefore now with artificial intelligence, you can output a lot more as a country so that it positions us to be able to produce more as a country, export more as a country, import less, and create better jobs for our people. Thank you.
Just add, obviously, we do not have the remit for energy, but with the remit of industry and digital development, we spend a lot of time thinking about the science of electrons in the context of Barbados. That if we were another country that was blessed with abundance of hydrocarbons, or we'd have a different approach than we would have in our developmental track. But we have to be realistic about what we are and how do we optimize what we are for the purpose of our growth. And there is an inextricable link between your capacity to generate abundance of electrons with your ability to grow. So our responsibility within the ministry is really around the science of electrons, driving the scientific discovery, driving the innovation in thinking about how do we create new, cheap, abundant electrons for the purpose of powering our development, specific around the things that within our remit.
Thank you very much, Minister. I listened very carefully to Mr. Hill. There were just two final interventions. I'll give both of them together, as you did mention them. I didn't hear much about fuel cells and hydrogen. And I was wondering, you may be aware that there is a project that is supposed to be coming on stream using fuel cells and hydrogen. And I was wondering if the ministry itself, separate from a private entity, was interested or having anything to be able to develop fuel cells and hydrogen technology. And then the second that you also mentioned, which we haven't really touched on, there's a lot of anxiety about artificial intelligence and the way in which artificial intelligence is used worldwide. Is your ministry developing any policies to be able to manage how artificial intelligence is developed in Barbados and what we can use it for in terms of developing the country as a whole?
Thank you. To answer your first question, yes, hydrogen dominates a lot of our thoughts, quite frankly, and I'll give way to Mark to answer on that, but let me answer your second question first. The remit of the green hydrogen portfolio does fall under MISS, which is led by BIDC. Regarding your second question around artificial intelligence, I must admit I am an artificial intelligence enthusiast, but an enthusiast doesn't prevent me from understanding the potential pitfalls of what I think is perhaps one of the most powerful tools that humanity has built. I think one of the things that we have to understand is that the step change of the advancement of a technology has never been so rapid as artificial intelligence. The rate and change of how long it took to make a car, to industrialize the mass usage of a car, or mass usage of the internet, or mass usage of airplanes, or any advanced technology humans have ever created, artificial intelligence's mass usage has been so much more rapid than anything else that's been such a step change. And as a result of that, there have been a lot of things that are full of trepidation, a lot of things that have not been done as well and been thoroughly thought out as they should be. And of course, in many instances, the regulations and the ethics around it is trying to catch up with the advancement of the technology. And that's the reality. So in a real sense, if someone here is an avid user of ChatGPT like I am, you would have noticed a difference in a month with the capabilities over what you were doing in February as to what you're doing to be able to do it now. It's incredible. So we understand that as a fundamental tool, as a small space, what artificial intelligence, and quite frankly, artificial general intelligence is going to be able to let a small country be able to do with a small population that has a fixed return over a period of time of its productivity. If well used, we can truly transform the capacity to be more productive from a small place. And I think this is something that we cannot afford to miss the opportunity on and understand the power of it. That ultimately we can return time to citizens, we can return time to institutions, we could return time to businesses to be really good at what they're good at, while then doing things that are time intensive, that are costly, that are things that are ultimately not as productive, and ultimately, how can we then drive more capabilities and profit to the country? Now, I actually think Barbados is an absolutely fantastic place to be a test bed of artificial intelligence, because in our DNA, quite frankly, we are driven by the concerns of the population and the concerns of labor. We are not going to be a place that is going to be disadvantaged in labor as a result of any new tool. Fundamentally, who we are as a nation is that we always put the pride and place and the security of jobs and people first. So, can we use advanced tools to make those jobs even more secure, more profitable, more beneficial? And that's the framework that we'll be operating with. So yes, during the course of the year, the ministry will produce quite a lot of engagement around artificial intelligence policies, around a national strategy around artificial intelligence. But all of that is going to be driven by our ability to understand how does it best suit us and play to our strengths, as well as negating any potential weaknesses that we have. Mark, I'll leave the second question around hydrogen to you.
Yeah. As it relates to the second question around hydrogen, the objective is the lowest costing electron. So while we have electrolysis as a pathway for developing an electron that requires high outputs of DC power, that's diverting a lot of renewable output, solar and wind, into a chemical process. We also believe that the pathway for biohydrogen, using biological waste and biological approaches, is the cheapest pathway towards a hydrogen input. So methane as a first step towards biohydrogen, because methane being CH4, you strip off the carbon, you're left back with 4 hydrogens, and therefore then that's a very low cost approach to greening molecules, as opposed to going towards a electrical electron type pathway to convert to molecules to reconvert back to electrons. So we're just looking at the lowest costing pathway, and we believe that biohydrogen is the lowest costing pathway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister and Mr. Hill. Anybody who has seen the development of the world has recognized clearly that those who follow the path of technology tend to be the victors. Just think of what gunpowder did for the world. And technology, I think as a country, we must embrace technology. And I think that you're on the right path, and we will continue to give the necessary support. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And good morning, Honourable Minister, to you and to your team. I must tell you, I found your opening remarks extremely impressive. And I find your team extremely impressive, even if not simple to understand. I trust that during the course of the rest of my conversation, on behalf of the people I was elected to serve, that we could perhaps try just to simplify it, though, so that they get it. Minister, I have said repeatedly through these estimates, conversations, that if a person is serious about understanding where a country is going, that the estimates and a budget often tell you the philosophy of a country. It tells you what the country believes in and the direction in which the country wants to go. And if there was a true manifestation of that, it would have to be your estimates. I have not seen one where the increases have been as significant. And I fully embrace it, particularly considering what you said this morning and the role that I think your ministry must play. Your estimates have gone from about 77 million in 2025, 2026 to 193 million. That is no walk in the park. And again, it is an expression in the confidence that the government has in the direction in which you're taking this ministry, and I commend you for what I think so far has been an outstanding job, Minister. But my question, having looked at the estimates, relates particularly to how does this translate into the lives of ordinary people. And I now have responsibility, as you know, for infrastructure as senior minister, but I also have responsibility for the Ministry of Public Works, basically transport and works. And a lot of the developments that I see in your ministry, I think, and I take your point that your ministry probably covers all the ministries. And for this to have real meaning, these numbers, your vision must affect ordinary people. And so when I study infrastructure, my question to you really, my first question to you is, how would this impact on government's capacity to be able to deliver to ordinary people, particularly around the infrastructural space? How do you see these increases, this allocation, improving all of the various ministries? I take your point that we want to continue to live in a world that has passed. And I think your ministry is going to have to drive a lot of this meaningful change. I mean, I'll probably ask that other question in a follow-up, but just explain to the public, how do you see yourself and the role you think you could play in infrastructure development particularly, but in relation to advancing the lives of people generally, because people fear in technology, and I think they need to know that there are tremendous benefits to it.
Thank you for that, Minister. And so I want to anchor my response in the fact that the reality of the ministry, which covers technology and science, is going to be dealing with a lot of technical topics. And so we will do our best to translate highly technical things in a way that is understandable. And quite frankly, one of the core messages at my weekly management meeting, and the team could attest to it, is really that none of the things that we are attempting to do last year or will attempt to do this year is in the purpose of just vanity. It is driven for the fundamental purpose of benefit in the lives of Barbadians every single day, and making it just easier to exist here, and quite frankly, getting to the point where it's beyond just easy, it's enjoyable to exist here. And so I could go, quite frankly, ministry by ministry, sector by sector, of thinking how, if we are able to do anything near what we intend to do, people's lives will be improved. If I think about the work that we're doing right now with the QEH and the health information system, the reality of us, a lot of us have experienced ourselves or family members who go to the QEH and they have, unfortunately, experiences that are not as great as they would like, and that is a result of so many components of that process being manualized. From asking a person multiple times, what's your mother's name, or same information that you give when the shift change, all of that because you do not have the digital infrastructure to be able to make a one-time interaction. I could extend that to something that you now lead with the Barbados License Authority, right? And how can we allow systems to talk to each other so that a person can almost in an automated way renew their license or update their registration of a vehicle, not having to wait in lines for long periods of time. I could extend that to the work you're going to be doing as well to managing the road infrastructure. You and I live in the same neighborhood, so you and I have probably discovered all the back roads to be able to get to the city in an hour. And the reality is that you've had, my daughter calls it, my 14-year-old daughter calls it traffic inflation. You had a traffic inflation as a result of the economy doing well, more people have vehicles and the same level of roads. And so how do we maintain roads in a way that you use IoT sensors, or you use satellite technology, or you use platforms such as Pearly to be able to notify when there might be an update that's required in the road, ultimately driving user experience to be improved? How do we make it so that initiatives such as the Birthright Fund is easy to manage and people have a notification of when they receive this $5,000 state benefit grant from the government, and then extending that to things like birth certificates and death certificates and all those things that are part and parcel of Barbadians' everyday life, and in many instances are manualized and slow and unfortunately frustrating. And so the work of the ministry is to build the infrastructure where these services now could be existed in a digital format that is extremely safe, that is extremely resilient, therefore the uptime is upwards of 99%, and that you can have great levels of trust that when you push a button, you'll get a response on what you need. And so that's what we're driven by. We're not driven by just having a data center for saying that we have a data center to show off. It's ultimately how are we creating infrastructure and services that are pleasurable to people, right? And even in the work that we're talking about around advanced science and technology, again, that's not really for the purpose of vanity. That is, how do we unlock the thing that Barbados has been extremely good at for its entire existence, the knowledge economy, in a way that reflects the future, the next 60 years of our development. What is the next generation of workforce going into? What areas are going to be able to give them job opportunities that are much more vibrant and exciting than job opportunities that currently exist? How do we lay the foundation for the next pillar of work, whether it's in pharmaceuticals or whether it's in advanced aviation or whether it's in ocean energy? What are the new things that we can build out through this ministry by creating the path where Barbadians, every single day, everyday Barbadians can see the new opportunities for them? So for my mind, it's a combination of being completely grounded to the needs and then putting the infrastructure in place from a digital perspective and a policy perspective to impact people's lives and make people's lives better and more enjoyable.
Thank you, Minister. Normally I have a whole range of follow-up questions, but I believe you were extremely thorough. I suspect at another point, we can have a conversation around specifically what that plan looks like. I think the only way to eat an elephant, they say, is in small bites. When a ministry like yours has responsibility for improving systems across the government that are stubborn and deliberate in holding on to the old ways, I think it's going to require a very deliberate and specific response on your part to be able to do it. So I take that, Chair, I will yield, and I want to thank you, Minister, for your very detailed and very simple explanation in a way that Barbadians can grasp. Right? Thank you very much, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to Minister and to his entire team. I believe that because of your youth is the reason why you are in this position, because if we are to drive the innovation and lead Barbados to a world-class standard, as you have projected in your opening remarks, I believe the future has to be in the hands of our young people who see the world differently and who interpret the world in a different way. So to whom much is given, much is expected, Minister. That said, one of the pillars on which the ministry has been evolving is being able to use the exuberance of youth, but also the professional experience of a number of our young Barbadians to be able to drive innovation and to develop industry in this country. And I recall being very excited when the paper came to Cabinet about Future Barbados and the opportunity for young people who remind me of myself when I first came back from the UK from studying, who was very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and certainly wanted to give back to my country. But unfortunately, you felt at times that Barbados was not ready for you because a lot of what you had learned on your degree, we were not yet ready to be able to make that transformation. And so many young people slow down, they turn to other areas that are perhaps more straightforward to be able to dive into, leaving behind, obviously, a lot of what they have learned with the experiences abroad. And therefore, Future Barbados for me meant that we had now an opportunity to harness a lot of our Barbadian students, a lot of our Barbadians living abroad, to be able to innovate and find solutions for everyday life for Barbados using the technology available. So my simple question to you, Minister, is that when I look at the estimates, I am seeing under Future Barbados sub-program 33, I am seeing under professional services an increase from 1.5 million to 3.2. I also see under 212 for operating expenses an increase from 1 million to 3 million. I am therefore seeking clarity from you and some explanation as to how the Future Barbados project is working, but also what do these numbers reflect in terms of the direction we're going, and perhaps a kind of synopsis as to the type of projects that Future Barbados is actually working on that Barbadians can really get a taste and a sense of what it is that that particular unit in the ministry is doing.
Thank you so much for that, Minister. I am dangerously over the limit of being young. Unfortunate for me. But I do remember, of course, I'll overshare a little bit my enthusiasm at the time of getting the Future Barbados people over the line when I had a previous role as Chief of Staff. I'm very proud of the work it has done, and I'm very proud of the fact that being asked to take the role I have, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet has agreed for Future Barbados to leave the Prime Minister's office and come to this ministry. And the reflection of the increase in budget is quite frankly a reflection increase in ambition for it. I think you hit the nail on the head that there's an intersection of a grouping of Barbadians that quite frankly think that a lot of what they see Barbados doesn't quite reflect the ambition that they have, and what they think that their level of contribution can be. And it is sizable enough that we felt it was necessary to create a way that persons with abundance of skills and opportunities, but perhaps not with the experience or the contacts or the reach yet, to be able to make a deep contribution to the advancement of the country, of the government specifically, that we could build a specific program around it. And the reality is that we've engaged with hundreds at this point in time, right? Through all types of different engagements, through our accelerators, through our calls for talent, for our calls for innovation, through our programs from the ocean to sports to all range of different things, right? Who have made contributions from policies to projects to inventions to all types of different things that have become part and parcel with advancing the country. The Cabinet received a presentation from a young member of the first cohort of Future Barbados, I'll call his name Christian Payne, from your constituency actually, who moved from thinking about ideas now to building a platform where we actually run the finance of our ministry from. And there'll be adoption for wider usage around different ministries, right? That came out of Future Barbados. Your current head of Fisheries Division was a member of the first cohort of Future Barbados. They're board members and all types of different contributors who are members now of former first grouping members of Future Barbados. And so we're proud of that initial work, but the idea is now to scale. Right? And the reality is that we believe there's an intersection between the ministry's mandate around science and technology and the fact that there has been a dearth of opportunity for persons who have graduated out of the University of West Indies with science degrees to have science degree jobs and technology jobs in Barbados. So how can we use the pillar of the innovation component of the ministry to in fact be that catalyst for new opportunities to be created? Can we create a situation where in fact we are a content studio, we are a technology studio in the ministry where people can come into the ministry with short-term engagements to be able to build things that move the country forward, right? So the significant increase in 226 is a reflection of that. How can we get a series of short-term engagements, quite frankly in the hundreds, where young Barbadians who are full of ideas can answer calls of innovation and create new products and tools that could be demonstrated, if of high quality, of course, within the government, right? So solving problems, anything ranging from agriculture to health to oceans to roads to whatever. They are full of ideas and full of possibilities, and so we see ourselves as a platform to be able to do that. That's one. Critically, the ministry also has a duty to express Barbados's position on our very specific contribution to global impact innovation. We are proud as a government of the work that's been done, for instance, on the Bridgetown Initiative, which is conceived in Barbados, led by a Barbadian, and has become adopted by the world. Are there other areas of impact innovation that we could be creating from here and telling stories to the world? I think that's a fundamental component of what Future Barbados expects to be doing in this next phase of iteration. And finally, and I'll defer as well to the head of Future Barbados, to Maisha Aitul, who's with us today, is we also realize that innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. Innovation is best suited where people with a wide variety of ideas can coalesce, can have shared values, of course, but a variety of perspectives that can exist and build things that are not previously conceived of. So can we attract global thinkers to Barbados who share our ideas, who want to build new initiatives and are grounded in making them Barbadians so the IP and the new ideas are based here, but working with Barbadians here to be able to create things that are for the world, but conceived and developed from here. And so you see the scale of the operation expenditure is also around that, building specific challenge calls around of Prime Minister's Innovation Awards, attracting global talent to be doing the interesting things, working alongside Indigenous awards to be able to have Barbadians creating things that could extend out to the world as well. So we have a lot of ambition for that. Tamaisha, I would invite you to say, share anything as well.
Good morning, colleagues. Tamaisha Eitel Harvey, Director of Future Barbados, as on the screen. Future Barbados is still here, and we have grown, as the Minister has noted. And we are in the process of, we've completed a health tech incubator with talent across the region to develop health technologies. I'll slow down, yes. I'll take a breath. The health tech incubator has completed. We'll be launching the ideation stage, the MVP track of actual health technologies built right here in Barbados to be piloted in the public sector. We'll be working with the Caribbean Science Foundation for the Caribbean Science Summit, first ever, which will give that opportunity to bring together science and technology talent from here and the diaspora to meet in person and online, and that will be in June this year. One of our key challenge areas will be mental health and building challenge teams around finding solutions for mental health. And so social impact innovation needs ideas, and it's not just youth. We want agility, we want new ways of looking at things, and it's not just technology, it's how does technology and policy come together to activate the solutions and continuously build the solutions. So that's where we are, we're still here, and as the Minister said in his opening remarks, we work across the ministries and support all the ministries because innovation happens when policy and people meet to find the solution.
Thank you, both Minister and Director. I think what I want coming out a bit more is the fact that you are still here and the project specifically that you're doing, because I think by your energy alone, Director, which all of us have had the pleasure of feeling in Cabinet, the loud voice and burst of energy, I think that has the potential to also inspire other young Barbadians as well to get on board. So I would hope that coming out of these estimates, not only do we continue to explore the professionals and the teams to be able to come in to drill down and to find these solutions, but that we also take a moment to promote the work that is also being done within that particular unit. My next question relates to BIDC. And again, this is an agency that for many years, I think perhaps has not had the attention that it requires. It has helped a number of people to be able to develop business, certainly to develop our motto, the part that speaks to industry. In the last few years, obviously, we've seen a greater thrust in trying to build out small enterprises and micro enterprises. I see under the professional services, we have about 2.5 million for this year. Despite the summary actually speaking to 316 being grants to public institutions, there's actually nothing in that column. I'm not sure if that is an error. But I would assume that there is a grant to public institutions that is to be allocated here. And then under 785, we are looking at about 4.3 million, which is a new amount under the head for assets under construction. So I would like the team to really just take the opportunity to tell us what is really the future looking like for BIDC. I know that a lot of work has been done, for instance, at Pelican to be able to build out a number of new industries. I'm very excited about that particular project. I know that Mr. Hill has been doing a lot of fabulous work down there. But what does the future hold in terms of what are the assets being built out? What is it in terms of the investment that is going to be made? What is the hope that is going to be given to young people, people in business to be able to see how they can play a part of the industrialization process?
Thank you, Minister. I'll just do a preamble, and obviously Mr. Hill could dive much more specifically into the answer. I think just like the technology division, or rather, just like the technology division, you had an expectation of the ministry that the capability of the specific agency didn't quite match. Where you've had a lot of infrastructure that for a long period of time existed from the 1970s that were effectively, BIDC was a renter of space. That was the major thrust of what it did. And there was a strong call by the Prime Minister and Cabinet that the reality of what we need to do for industrial development needed a lot more than that from BIDC. It needed BIDC to reposition itself to become an attractor of global industrial investment. It needed to be BIDC to refurbish, refresh, build out a new type of offering to a global market that made it interesting, where people can build new and dynamic products from Barbados and export to the world. It needed BIDC to be an entity that interacted with the local reality around cost of living and cost of production and all those things, that it became much more competitive to be building things from Barbados. And so the budget reflects, or the shift of the allocation of the budget, because the total amount is in around the same, it reflects the need to bring in skills and specific focus on infrastructural development to allow the level of innovation and allow the level of evolution that BIC requires, or the country requires. Right now, under our portfolio is a number of large infrastructural build-outs, one of which has become pretty popular in Barbados, which is next to Gildan. We colloquially call it the spaceship, which is this 80,000 square foot space that will be allocated to building out a life science hub. And quite frankly, we've attracted really exciting global interest around that, and we'll expand on that at a later date when the ink is dry on that possibility. But in addition to that, we're also building out spaces in the Pelican area around institutionalizing knowledge for industry and looking at much more broader focus on building out infrastructure for the purpose of housing global production from Barbados. Mark, I'll let you dive in a lot more about the GIGA program and your whole kind of thrust around reindustrialization.
Thanks, Minister. So Deputy Prime Minister, the line for the 2.5 million, that is really about how do we build the capacity around GIGA. That's to help procure the necessary engineering talent, project management talent that we need at a global type of scale, and also at the local and regional scale. Because the GIGA projects are big. The zones, the corridors, north, south, east, west corridor, requires a lot of planning, a lot of integration, a lot of interaction with a number of stakeholders. And then the actual zones themselves, the north zone in St. Lucie, where we're forecast to have not just the data center interconnecting, but also to advance manufacturing in that place. We're looking to scale up the amount of industrial space that we have. Currently, the corporation is out of space, and a number of persons will be calling us every day. Opportunities are arising, but we actually have no infrastructure to put people in. We're currently at 85% occupancy. Then we have 10% occupancy under renovation. And then we have 5% that is derelict, that cannot be used. So we have an infrastructure crisis, a space crisis right now, because what is happening is Barbados is becoming the preferred choice for people to come and make things, but we don't have the space for them to make. So basically what that funds is helping us to do is to be able to accelerate how we're going to deploy rapidly the infrastructure that we need to capture the opportunities that we have been out there putting into the global space. So Barbados have been driving forward narrative around the Bridgetown Initiative. We've been leading around climate conversation. With UNIDO, we are the leading partner for SID's reindustrialization. But as we attract people, there's no place to house them. So we have to rapidly build out an additional, we have to increase by 100% in terms of the amount of space that we have right now. So the legacy product has to be upgraded, as my minister pointed out, but we need new greenfield space for new growth to occur. And that 2.5 million, which is very low, is to really help get us there. The 4-point-something million in terms of infrastructure, again, that is just tidying up, wrapping up legacy product and a few of the existing infrastructures that we have built, such as the facility at Newton Industrial Park. In addition to that, the Food Center, which we have also made some significant investment around our centers of excellence. That funds will also be used to help equip the centers of excellence that are necessary to help small businesses to be able to scale, to help householders with their particular recipes to be able to get their output out to the supermarkets, So therefore, those funds are critical in delivering our program for this year. Yeah.
Minister, if I just follow up, it's important for us to frame out that our expectation is not $2.5 million is going to allow us to create 100% of increase of the infrastructure we have. It's really around procuring the talent to be able to build the infrastructure in terms of engineering and design capabilities, as well as the investment team to be able to then raise the investment to be able to finance those things. So I just wanted to make sure that was very clear and well received. The idea is, how do we enable the entity in BIDC to be able to position itself to be able to then get to the point of building out the infrastructure. And so that's where the funding is allocated towards.
Yeah, I thank you for that, both Minister and CEO. Again, I think always the concern here is that while we're doing the big projects, that there are a lot of fledgling businesses and entrepreneurs who are trying to tap into the resources to take their product bigger, to reach that level. And often they're not perhaps sure exactly how to tap into those resources. So I think having two levels of being able to help lift those persons up, I think is going to be critical. I would make the point as well that, I mean, I've shadowed the Ministry of Business, certainly when I was in opposition, and I keep a keen eye on visiting the various expos, even recently with the AgriFest. And you see a lot of products which potentially could be exported. Yet, within a weekend, these things are broken down. And again, unless you are keeping your eye on the ball in terms of following up with where these persons are, many times we don't see them again. So I appreciate that you are building out spaces, hopefully to be able to target a number of those individuals. But maybe we need to direct specific funds to helping some of these persons who are appearing in these spaces, in these various markets, creating niche products that really need to be tapped into. I'll just share, I met a young man and his family who was actually doing CMOS, bottling CMOS. They've developed a project off of the north of the island. Very innovative. No bottling it and sending it to the supermarket. But again, to me, we should be, again, on the ball, you know, in that space, trying to see how we can basically capitalize on products like that and certainly get them on the supermarket shelves in, you know, a Publix in the US or elsewhere. So again, I think the two-pronged approach is very important. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for that, Minister. But just to respond, I think you'll be pleased that Mr. Hills probably indicated that that producer to the north of the island is actually one of his clients at the Food Science Center.
Yes.
And the reality is that prior to having this role and working in government, I was a small business operator, and I could say from my own experience, there's nothing a small business loves than a larger business buying its services. And so fundamentally, our approach is really on two prongs. One, how do we create larger business sector that allows it to then purchases the goods and services of small businesses and allow them to thrive, and enable those smaller businesses to then become larger businesses, right? And those are two cornerstones of how we think about it. One, from a production perspective. So how do we create infrastructural framework? And the Food Science Center is a beautiful example of that, or specifically around food production. The level of equipment that you have there, and a small family business is not going to be able to have the level of chillers and boilers and bottlers and printers and labelers and packages the way that an entity that is funded by government can. So can we sell time to them or lease time to them as part of a investment program to allow them to have to that level? And we have numerous examples of that, from same CMOS to rum cream to pepper sauce to all variety of things, and a number of businesses are operating from there. But having created it from there and then getting to the point of time where you want to export, that's really around standards. That's not even whether I like how it tastes. That's really around, do I meet the standard for the purpose of exporting out of Barbados and landing in a market that has a different law and different expectation and health certifications allow us to do that. And again, I know Mark has spoken quite a lot, so I'll let Hayden Ryan from BNSI speak a little bit about that and how their BNSI is collaborating with BIDC around the idea of standardization of our products for the purpose of export. Hayden?
Yeah, thank you, Minister Hayden Ryan, Director of the Barbados National Standards Institution. And thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak in such an honorable chamber. So just to respond to Minister, yes, I mean, most Barbadians, we don't really think of standards in our daily lives, but standards do benefit everyone every single day. They help to ensure that our roads last longer, hospitals operate efficiently, the products we buy are safe, and that our businesses can compete in international markets. If we are serious about being world-class, like has been mentioned, and to be globally competitive, we certainly have to be serious about the quality of what we produce and the quality of the services that we deliver as well. So in this particular case, we have partnered with the BIDC because we have wonderful entrepreneurs doing wonderful products in Barbados, as you know. And some of the small technical trip-ups that they encounter, they need the guidance of standards. I'll give you an example. If you want to label your CMOS and have it satisfy international labeling standards, if your font size is below 1.6 millimeters, and that's according to the lowercase o in the alphabet, the product cannot leave our shores, you know? A technical nuance that the producer may not know. Now, does that impact the taste and the like of the CMOS, even the demand? No, but you won't be able to export. Small examples, so what we've done is that we've ramped up, especially this year, again, in tandem with the BIDC, so that all of the producers, all of the manufacturers have the requisite training and understanding how to meet international standards, so that it really becomes part of our DNA, where we're not just thinking about numbers and quantity, but we are really focused on the quality in the conversation, because that's where our competitive advantage lies. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister and team. I will come back in a bit later because I think I have taken up quite a bit of this morning's discussion. Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Michael South. St. James Central, sorry.
I'm ever so grateful to be noticed, Mr. Chairman. Honourable Minister, I tend to share the perspective of my friend, the Honourable Member from St. Michael South, who had urged the simplicity of language, because I think that you are in the middle of a fundamental transformative process in Barbados. And it is a journey on which we have to carry all of our citizens. And the lexicon, the language, the vocabulary has changed. And a lot of the topics are conceptually difficult to grasp. And we have to try to make it as simple as possible so that we do not lose the listening audience as we try to make sure that every Barbadian has a better understanding of the importance of what is taking place. I wanted to speak to you on two matters. The first one probably is a continuum of where we left off of the previous question. And the director of the Barbados National Standards Institute knows how strongly I feel on this matter of standards, as indeed do you, Minister. And I borrow from his own phraseology, the seriousness of the world. If we're going to be serious about the world, we have to be serious about the quality of what we do. And he quite rightly pointed to the efforts which are being made to ramp up training and an understanding of standards. But I want us to go a little bit more fully. In my mind's eye, and I think in the eye of your team, in the eyes of your team, we have to come to a point in Barbados where every single commercial enterprise that we engage in is driven by one word, and that is the word standards. From the very smallest, the most micro business, up until the largest of contractual services, for example, the largest industrial enterprise that we may be able to put together. We have to be mindful of the fact that and I believe I said this when I was in the well myself, that we have to see Barbados as the practice wicket, and that once we can succeed here at the highest level of performance, which really is standards where we have none, we create, so that we get our entrepreneurs and our businesses as a whole to be accustomed to global class, then we have a far easier effort when once we start to export seriously. But I want you now, I want to invite, if I may, the director himself to speak to where that vision will ultimately take us in the context of a quality economy, an economy which rests on standards and the quality of that which we do.
Honourable member, let me just give you a slight correction. The minister has the authority to call the director. It shouldn't come from the floor. It goes through the minister.
Chairman.
Thank you.
So I will ask the minister if he would be so good as to speak to it or find a member of his team to whom he would wish to refer it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, my senior minister. And I will, in fact, defer shortly to the CEO of BSNI. But just to say that, of course, we've spoken quite a lot in this chamber and the other chamber about the idea of becoming world-class by 2030. But that is a standard that we have to achieve. So it's not just a term. So when I use the phrase better, better is a standard. That you have a certain benchmark and you make a reality of where you are right now. You indicate a number in terms of satisfaction or space that you want to reach, and you create a deliberate plan to be able to achieve such. So I think I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's a fundamental component of everything that is going to be part and parcel with the evolution of our ability to become resilient and prosperous, our ability to center ourselves around becoming a standards-based economy. So Hayden?
Thank you, Minister. Through you, Chair, I am always heartened and encouraged by the passion of Senior Minister and my Minister on this topic of standards. It is no secret that behind the strong economies and the competitive economies, behind that is a strong quality infrastructure. And when we speak about quality infrastructure, we're talking about the system that really ensures that products that we buy are safe, that the services that we receive are reliable, and that the infrastructure that we build is really what we call fit for purpose. Now, the BNSI plays a critical role in this system by developing standards which, again, would be suitable for a local context, by testing materials as well, and really by ensuring that the goods and the services used across our country meet internationally recognized levels of quality and levels of safety. Now, in Barbados, when it comes to service, for example, and there are different views on the levels of service that we receive in Barbados, but too often we talk about service excellence, and we reduce it to politeness and friendliness. While those are important, true service excellence goes much deeper. It really means that services are designed, they're delivered, and they're evaluated according to clear internationally recognized standards. The BNSI Service Excellence Standards, we've developed a suite of standards for service excellence, and that really provides a framework to help organizations design better services and helps them to measure that performance as well, where then they can continually improve the customer service experience. How does that benefit us and our businesses and our industries? Well, it ensures consistency. Many times, smaller businesses fail because in January they have a certain product or a service, but when you like it and you return in May, you get a slightly different experience. So consistency, maintaining that high quality of service, whether someone is arriving at the airport, Chair, or visiting a government office, or even just doing business with a local company. We have to make sure that we maintain certain levels of service. Efficiency is also increased with standards, and reducing delays and improving how quickly people receive services. We could all find examples there where people often experience delays, and it's not really a result of people in the private or public sector needed to work harder. Sometimes it is surrounding the types of quality systems that we have in place, the logistics that we have, how are things communicated, and this is very, very important. Finally, a quality culture, so to speak, will help us to build trust. And I think ultimately that's where we land. We will enhance and improve trust in our public institutions by setting clear expectations, by setting clear timelines, and accountability. So these standards help build a culture of quality where excellence is planned, is measured, and continually improved. So that is what we mean, Senior Minister, when we speak about building a quality economy for Barbados. And is one where our goods and our services meet international standards, yes, but then we are better able to attract investment, we're better able to deliver excellent experiences, and that's both for citizens and visitors. So the role of the BNSI is really committed to advance this vision, so to speak. This current financial year, yes, we are significantly ramping up the training, the awareness, the workshops, really to help build that quality culture. I would like to perhaps touch, if I may, on some of the areas that BNSI is involved in. We do have laboratory services, as you know. We've been fortunate to have significant investment in our laboratory services, where we've conducted over 3,000 tests to support several major national projects. And this really helps to ensure that the construction materials meet required standards and that buildings and infrastructure are safe and durable. So for example, BNSI supported the development of Cargo Berth 6 at the Barbados port, helping to ensure that the port remains safe and reliable for trade. Testing was carried out for the Royalton Hotel development, a lot of the major infrastructural works. This supports the growth in tourism. It also helps with job creation. So our laboratory services is an important part of the, the infrastructural context, Scotland District, and the list goes on. Now, Minister earlier, Minister Humphreys spoke, Senior Minister spoke about infrastructure, particular physical infrastructure. And I'm heartened to say that we have a project to improve the quality and the durability of the roads. Now, we know the frustration of driving on some of our roads when it comes to, being uneven or constantly under repair. So the condition of our roads really affect our daily lives. Whether people are going to work, taking children to school, we know the situation of the road. So while the repairs on the roads, we see that visible effort, and I commend the teams because oftentimes it is frequent. The most important factors affecting how long our roads last is the quality of the material used to lay the roads. Now, over the years, we have increased pressure on our roads. More vehicles, heavier vehicles, more importantly. The weather conditions have increased significantly over the past decades, okay? All of these factors place stress on our road surfaces. So we need the science supported by our laboratory testing to develop new mixes which are more adequate for our situation. So it is not from lack of effort, but we do need now to advance a design mix for asphalt and our bitumen, which BNSI has already started to engage with the stakeholders. Some of the discussions have gone as far to say that we will have rubber, the tires that we use, yes, and PVC as well, you know, and all of these scientific innovations help to strengthen, you know, what we need to do in our country given our context. So that is the kind of support, Minister, that we are already, you know, running forward with. Again, making the effort that we do in a country not just increase in terms of, you know, do more, but be more innovative when it comes to quality and standards. Thank you.
If I could just add before you go, Senior Minister, is to the point raised by yourself, Senior Minister Humphrey, of landing the highly technical work to impact people's day-to-day lives. This is a very pragmatic example of it, right? So how do we manage the quality of inputs, which is chemistry, right? And having tests run to understand and form and model out the impact on people's wear and tear of the roads and their lives, extending that to food, extending that to building materials, extending it to everything, so making it highly pragmatic. The other part of it that the CEO didn't say, but it's true, is this idea of better, as I said before, is a standard. So he knows this. I've asked that whatever is an ISO certified ministry, let the MIS be the first test tube of that being so. How fast do we pay people? How fast do we deliver responses on complaints? What's our quality of infrastructure? How do we manage our cybersecurity? All of those things will be judged by a standard. Let us become the test bed for what that looks like, to stand up a high-quality ISO certified ministry, and then offer that to the rest of the ministry as a test example of what that can be. So delivering pragmatic use of the power that resides with BNSI to making lives better is what we're going after.
I could not agree with you more, Minister, and I would want to invite an even further elaboration from you, or alternatively the director, because this is a national conversation which I think we must have. And we'll be pulling wool over our own eyes if we do not realize that this is a major weakness in all of Barbados. Highway 1, to which you referred, is in my constituency, and it was built at a cost of a substantial number of millions of dollars. And for a finished product where you have the effect of feeling almost like if you have dropped into a pothole because the hydrant has not been brought to the level of the road, is really something about which we cannot feel proud. Lovely nylon strip, but the effect of the jarring on the vehicle is identical to if it had not been fixed at all. Now, the point that I want to make is, how then do we move from this being a general discussion, a normative discussion, this is what we ought to do, this is what we should do, we would like to see this happen, to get it to a point where now there is some compelling aspect to this issue of standards, where entities, we work with them, we train them, but then we hold them to account, we hold feet to the fire. Not only in services, but across all of the commercial space. Does the ministry have a plan of action in that regard?
Thank you, Senior Minister, and obviously, thank you always on your support of this topic and others. So two things. Yes, there is a plan in place, and I'll let Director Ryan speak a little bit more about where we're going to go in terms of strengthening BNSI for that purpose. But I think it would be remiss of me if I don't mention in this moment, quite frankly, when I took up the ministry, the portfolio that probably I was most excited by is really around the science pillar. That I think that we've badly undervalued the role of science in terms of our national development. That at the core of everything is really around science, right? So how do we solve our own problems that we are some cases slightly unique to us, but also some cases extend beyond us, such as the quality of roads, right? Can we, from our perspective, build a solution that's applicable to us that could be valued at hundreds of millions of dollars of productivity gains and efficiency gains, but then translate that to exportable IP services business to elsewhere, right? And there are a stack of hundreds of such problems existing, from things related to health or building materials or digital technologies or whatever, right? Wide span of it. So making science as a core component of us being able to find solutions for ourselves, that are highly pragmatic and highly impactful in people's lives, and then scaling that as global businesses. So it would be remiss of me if I don't indicate that is a firm pillar of what BIDC, BNSI, MISS in general, Supernova Labs, which is led by Jamila Mosley, who's here today, that's the work that we're going to be doing. Specifically related, of course, to your question, Director, if you would expound a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Minister, and through you, Chair. So I would pick up on even the healthcare that Minister just touched on. We have, and it's no secret, we have dedicated, hardworking professionals in both the public and the private healthcare institutions. So everyday doctors, nurses, technicians, support staff work tirelessly to care for our citizens. But their commitment ensures that families receive the care and the attention that they need. If we encounter inefficiencies, in many cases, it is not the professionals that, again, need to work harder. But if we have strong systems needed to support the delivery of safe and reliable healthcare, and I'm talking about quality management systems. So there's a particular standard called the ISO 9001, and this is generic to any type of business, profit, non-profit, large, small, where efficiencies, gains in maximizing even workflows can be improved. So our intention is to have a focused approach across the sectors so that services are delivered consistently and efficiently. And this can mean better management to continue in the health sector, better management of patient records, improved coordination among the staff, proper handling of equipment and supplies, stronger monitoring of how services are delivered. All of these areas speak to a solid quality management system, which goes beyond someone just being told work harder or work longer, because already the professionals are committed. But if we can revise and improve our quality management systems, that is where I think we would get real gains. And Minister and myself, we've discussed going as far as to have a new unit within MIST, which would be, I don't want to use the word enforcement, but a standards compliance unit, so to speak, where you have a third-party impartial team that is holding accountable the entities who have decided to implement recognized quality management systems. Not in a punitive way, not for penalties, but more so to be able to monitor so that we can improve. So if we're not measuring according to standards, it is very difficult to have improvement gains. So we're really looking forward in this financial year to have those types of exercises delivered. Thank you.
Just as a slight, I was in a meeting where you, Senior Minister, described Mr. Ryan as someone who, he said, hides his light under bushel. And I think
that was the phrase I used.
Yeah, and I think he's not fully framing out, quite frankly, the impact of the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And this pragmatic things, like you take a trip somewhere and you put your suitcase on a scale, someone has to calibrate that scale to make sure that your 50 kilograms is in fact full of 50 kilograms. You go to the hospital and you have all types of measurement tools, whether it's for blood or whatever, and you have tools that need to be calibrated so that when a doctor sees a reading, the reading is in fact correct, right? So the level of work of BNSI to ensure that fairness and quality happens around the measurement of the unseen things in people's lives, that if not well managed, will have disastrous effects on people's lives. I think it's a bit of an unsung hero, quite frankly, and it would be remiss of me not to mention it here now.
And I share your view, Minister. I had that view when I was first in this particular role of this ministry that I now hold. And I certainly, as Senior Minister responsible for the productive sector, I have come to understand that the BNSI really is an indispensable part of growth and competitiveness in Barbados. But whenever we talk about it as a country, whenever we talk the language of growth and competitiveness, we very seldom, if ever, focus on the national standards of the country. May I shift gears then to another matter which turns on intellectual capital?
Honourable
I
Minister,
had two questions.
follow up question, not new question. Follow up, so you have to give way to another member.
Mr. Chairman, I do not know what happened between yesterday and today, but you and I seem to have found divergent paths. But as usual,
Honourable,
it is my nature to be very humble, sir. I will do as you insist.
Honourable member, it has always been three follow-up questions. One question, three follow-up questions, then you come again. Thank you, Honourable member. Honourable member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker progress. I beg to leave this again.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favor, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the chamber until 10 past 12.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 10 minutes after 12. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 10 after 12. This sitting is resumed. Prior to this suspension, this honorable chamber was debating the Appropriation Bill 2026. We revert to the Appropriation Bill 2026.
This House is now in standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to you, Minister and team. It's good to see some familiar faces sitting in the well. This ministry has a special place in my heart. It's the first ministry that I would have had the honor to serve in. And I know that this is a very dedicated and hardworking team. And I must say that I'm pleased to see that there has been a significant jump in the amount of investment that has been made into this ministry. It's a very critical ministry. It has a very important role to play in the entire architecture of the Barbados that we're seeking to build. When I took over the ministry, or was given responsibility for the ministry, we had a budget of about $40 million. So to see you now at 80 something million, I am happy to see that the government has acceded to making this significant investment. I want to bring the conversation to the first part of the responsibilities in which the name of the ministry speaks to, industry. We've had conversations that kind of skirted around it throughout the course of this morning's dialogue. We talked about industrialization, we talked about Industry 5.0, we talked about, some of those things. And I really wanted to bring this back to a very grassroots level. Your ministry has responsibility for the development of industry, setting policies that would enable an environment to be created that allows for industry to take place. And when I think of industry, I think of our agro-processors, I think of our the persons who are in the food space, the persons who are making the sauces and the condiments and different things like that. I had the privilege when I was in the ministry of being the minister that led to the creation of the International Food Science Center. So I know the impact of what a vehicle like that would have had. And I hope that in the response to this first question, it's really one question, Mr. Chair. I hope that in the response to this one question that I will be able to hear some statistics even on the impact and the output that has come from the International Food Science Center, because we've mentioned it in passing today, but it would be good to actually have some statistics to show what the impact has been over the few years that it has been in existence. But I want, Minister, for you to speak to the overarching policy for supporting industry and its development in our country. What is the overarching policy, the ethos that you are pursuing to develop industry at the level of grassroots? The not nail tech necessarily, but the food producer within my constituency in St. Michael North, the guy who sells me my natural juices in Grisette's. I want to be able to hear from you, what is the ethos that is guiding the ministry relative to industry in its development? And even as I put that out there, if you could also, in speaking to policy and ethos, if you could speak to the Sustainable Industrial Development Policy. This was a policy that when I first came into cabinet, I was tasked with the responsibility of driving this policy and getting it put into cabinet. We did that, and it was sent off to CPC for the drafting of the Sustainable Industrial Development Bill to become act. Unfortunately, I've not heard much since then. So if you can probably put it in the context of the Sustainable Industrial Development Policy that we had or have, that would also give, I think, some benefit to the listeners and to the people of Barbados. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I will say that I couldn't imagine doing this job with the $40 million budget, so kudos to you for doing what you did with that. And so CEO of BIDC will add after I do, but I'll go wider to them to go narrow, quite frankly, is What we recognized at the point in time of taking up the role within the ministry, and we had the privilege of doing some study tours specifically to Singapore, and looking at, despite the high level of technology importance to the economy, digital economy's importance to the economy, science, its importance to the economy, that by law, the Parliament has set a minimum floor of industry being over 20% of the overall gross domestic product. That because that so much of a small island state's capacity to be resilient is based on what it's able to make for itself and export from itself to other places, that by law, you had to adjust the budgets and the production capacity of the country to not be under a certain floor. And this was exciting. This was new to me, quite frankly. And so we spent a lot of time thinking that through and what that would represent for Barbados. People who here know better than I do that Barbados obviously had a significant investment in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, building out an industrial infrastructure, largely around large spaces and inviting global entities to make things from Barbados. One standout entity of that such, of course, is Intel, which of course is now the location for the popular Sheraton Mall. And the idea that from Barbados you had high-value technical products being made from Barbados, being shipped out from Barbados, is the kind of business, of course, that we want to get back towards. Now, fundamental to all of that is then a society which is in the business of making things. And I think, and I'll be strong in my words, I think we have drifted away from being makers of products that are valuable to becoming consumers of products that we value, right? That we look to other markets to create things for us that we consume, as opposed to how much do we value the idea of creating things for ourselves that we enjoy and make for ourselves and then can sell to others. Economies of scales also matter, because my ability to create something that is of high quality or cheap or be able to deliver is directly related to my quality of service, my quality of technologies, my quality of products and inputs, and the prices of those things. And so for small places, you're always going to have that balance that you're going to be built on. So our overall strategy is really based, and we spoke a little bit earlier with Deputy Prime Minister, is really based on two concurrent tracks. One, how do we encourage indigenous making of high-value things, of valuable things that we consume here, that we enjoy, and a certain section of those valuable things that we consume here, make here, and enjoy can then be exported out to create revenue for the country, critically foreign exchange. Not every single thing we make in Barbados will be the point of exporting out. Not anything that's made in the United States of America or Germany or any large space is exported out. But a significant portion of it has to be to fuel in the foreign exchange we require to grow and run this economy. A certain percentage of people who are making things from Barbados have to make things for the purpose of selling it outside of Barbados. And we are driven by that, right? To the point where, well, obviously under your stewardship, there was a philosophy and name change around BIC, thinking much more about export, right? And that's a fundamental component of it. I do not think that we have done a strong enough job around that and the importance of that. And that is not to criticize any of the work that's happened previously. It's just a fundamental shift in our mindset that is necessary, that we are realistic about what we are, how we can produce, and what we must produce for to make a living. And that's the reality. Now, a portion of that making has to be things that the world wants. We need to understand what the world wants, how they want it, the price they want it, the quality they want it, what's the branding associated with, and all those types of things. So some fundamental work has to be done about what does it make sense to produce from Barbados? What sense of the price scale does it make sense from Barbados? And we have a very strong inclination that what Barbados has done very, very well is that it's had family-centered businesses, so what we call your jams and your jellies and your pepper sauces, in a colloquial manner. That's not colloquial, that's handcrafted family businesses, have done very well in the Barbados circumstances. A percentage of them have the ambition and the appetite to sell beyond Barbados. How do we identify those, support those, grow those for the purpose of shipping outside of Barbados and building industry from that? And then be tools of inspiration for other companies that want to do such. So we are fundamentally driven by that. Now, while doing that, and we spoke a lot of big business, and we're not going to shy away from big business, because as I said before, small businesses love big businesses, right? Because big businesses become small businesses' best customer, right? So how concurrent paths can we facilitate the growth of small businesses by driving more big businesses in, which will then become contractors of, or contractees of these small businesses. So concurrent paths are required. Now, we've made a shift from, and again, the CEO of Export Barbados will go a little bit more detail. We've made a shift on how we see the government's role in facilitating the growth of small businesses away from a grant-related model around special technical assistance to an infrastructure-related model around your technology, your certification, your knowledge, your market research. How do we add value into the business in a way that's beyond the cash? We've done analysis of it, and we've seen that although very well intended and created for good reasons, the value return on the cash inputs were not as significant as we wanted them to be. So how do we provide the same amount of service, the same amount of input into business, but we allow you space in the food science center that has the machinery you need to create your jams and jellies and pepper sauces? How can we spend the money on a flight for you to get your packages and goods across the island onto the North American market or wherever you need to be for the purpose of your export? To the point of Mr. Ryan, how do we then spend money on the design you need for your packaging so that your 0.6 millimeter packaging label is done to the right specification and you don't have to worry about these things? What are the inputs that we could put into
Honourable
businesses?
Minister, you land the plane.
Apologies. I'm excited about the topic, Chair.
I realize.
Yeah. So let me hand over to the CEO because I could go on this quite a while. Apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So basically, it's 2 points we're looking at. We're looking at industrial policy, which is the instrumentality that government developed in order to help direct and drive reindustrialization. Pretty much where the seat is at is evolving because subsequent to the development of the CETA, technologies have emerged extremely rapidly. When the CETA was developed, the place where automation was the primary discussion, the instruments that we developed around strategic investment, around infrastructure, around finance, the export support that we were looking at, research and development tools, and the skills development were really centered around just Industry 4.0. Subsequent to that, AI has come on stream, which lends itself to supporting the ecosystems both for small businesses and household cottage industries in a significant way. So there's an upgrade to the CETA that is taking place. But having said that, from a reindustrialization standpoint, we start to still put in some of the key building blocks around, number one, infrastructure. So for example, the Food Science Center as a tool that helps. At this point in time, there are over 100 small business persons that use and benefit from the International Food Science Center every day. And by persons, I don't mean just individuals, I mean households and household enterprises. So for example, the company that the Deputy Prime Minister would have mentioned, we would have sponsored the rafts that grow the sea moss. We would have imported the sea moss seeds, made sure it was planted out, and that would have happened under the Minister of Environment back in 2024. We would have supported the entire pilot to sums of infrastructural support and finance. And then to the point now we're the ones who are helping to bottle, standardize, and scale the CMC moss business. We have Carrington's Rum Cream, a family that comes in, a grandmother, a grandson, a family recipe that they're trying to protect, the brothers, the sisters, and they actually occupy the Food Science Center as a family. It's just a beautiful thing to watch. And they're doing their mixing. They don't want you to come too close because it's a family recipe. So we have those safeguards in place. And their output moved from 300 bottles of Carrington Rum Cream per week to 3,000 per day through that infrastructural investment. In other families we have, there's One Drop, the infamous One Drop pepper sauce. Again, family enterprise. A mother that controls the recipe, 2 children that have division of labor, and another uncle that comes in and provides support. Again, she's been able to scale from just doing 300 bottles, and her output now is as close to 30,000 bottles in terms of her demand. Another company that we have coming through. So what we're seeing is, as Minister pointed out, households with unique what they would call family recipes, leveraging the center to scale their output. They're supplying Massey, they're supplying other stores, but also to their exporting as well. So what we're saying is that center of excellence model around food processing can now scale out to construction, center of excellence for construction, center of excellence for beauty science, so that the standards that are necessary are pretty much built into the ecosystem. So when you come in, you get the lab support, you get all of that infrastructure support. So the policy of centers of excellence is actually producing and bearing significant fruit as we speak. In addition to that, and the last thing is, from a supply chain standpoint, we've been able to reduce the cost of inputs for small businesses as well. So for example, food inputs, regardless of what a food processing company wants to produce, both procuring locally from local farmers, regionally and internationally, we've reduced the cost of inputs by 30% so far through that strategy, so that more small businesses can produce more and output more. So the relationship is significant. Thank you.
Excellent. That's the kind of granular detail that I was looking for, and those real world and real life stories and the results really of what the vision of the International Food Science Center is very warming to my heart. Just my last, I wasn't going to do a follow-up, but just my last question relative to industry. Are there any specific industries that you're currently focusing on for expansion? If you can give some insight into that, that'll be useful. I say that because I'm coming back to my mind relative to Sea Island cotton. And the fact that this was one of those, from many, many years ago, one of those industries that we always talked about the potential of it because of the high quality it is on the world's, when we talk standards, the high quality of it across the globe. So outside of Sea Island cotton, or even as we speak about Sea Island cotton, are there any specific industries that you're currently seeking to expand and explode for the benefit of the average person in Barbados? And even as I say that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for the question. The chair has given me a look that I'm running along too long for my answer, so I'll speed through the answer. Yes, ultimately the role is to identify industries that are highly profitable and highly sustainable for Barbadians. So absolutely along the line of food production industries, but added to that, technology is an industry, right? So how do you facilitate developers of apps, software, platforms, programs to have the infrastructure required to build things and then scale on beyond our shores? A huge one of focus that is of huge import to the government, and as referenced in the manifesto in quite a number of detailed areas, is really around life sciences. Then fundamentally, how are you converting the significant number of young Barbadians who output out of the University of the West Indies every single year with biology, chemistry, biochemistry, physics degrees, but are not connected to industry to be making things and being part of a value chain of production. There are not enough scientific jobs. So how do we land and create companies that are focused on all components of science, whether it's beauty industry or whether it's large-scale biologics manufacturing? How do we make that a strong part of the infrastructure around our economy? Yes, there is a wide expanse of areas of work that we're doing that, and perhaps with the chair's permission on another point of expansion, we could go even further in.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Catch me on. Hi, morning all. Sorry, good afternoon all. Minister and crew. I see in your program 043 application of information technology and your sub-program 0032 digital solutions. You would have moved from professional services, the approved estimate is 60,000, revised estimate of 3,521,000 or so, to an estimate this year, 26 to 27, of $100,000. And this program really looks at developing and deployment of solutions, including managing the integrity, protection and management of integrity, security, availability, reliability of Barbados digital assets. I'm asking the question because I think it's a question that sits on the brainstem of a lot of Barbadians. And this question is as it relates to cybersecurity. We are moving into a digital sphere, one where with the press of a button, AI can tell us how much people in the room, probably change our hairstyles, make you chair the member of parliament for Christchurch West Central. It can do a lot of different things that are out of our mindset. I'm saying persons who represent past the young phase, maybe in the twilight of their years, often ask about their security in terms of banking security. They see all these fancy things on the phone. There are a lot of questions. I know there's something called malware, and the people in your dimension will speak about malware. In my space, I would call it malicious software. It may be a Bayesian term too. Malicious software. And how do we treat to these things as it relates to cybersecurity? I want you to let the whole of Barbados know that the security in the digital atmosphere is one that could be protected with the right technologies, and that your ministry is doing its due diligence as it relates to ensuring that a lot of things that we see happen in the past as it relates to these same malware and other issues related to data, that these things could be solved and that their digital platform can indeed be protected. Thank you.
Chair, through you, Minister, thank you. Within your framing, there were a few things that I'll just quickly address. You started off regarding reference to the allocations within the sub-programs, and that is a reflection of evolution of the operation of the ministry, where digital solutions previously had, was where a lot of the financing for cybersecurity and digital protection budget lay. And now standing up a dedicated cybersecurity pillar within the ministry meant that we reallocated where those funds go. And if you look at the cybersecurity related budget, it is significant. Quite frankly, the Minister of Finance was, how can I be kind to my friend? The Minister of Finance was shocked by the level of expenditure it required. And I indicated to him the reality is the price of defending our digital space is expensive. It is some of the most advanced services, skills, equipment in the world, and to be resilient in that space, you're going to have to pay what the cost of things are. So that is reflected in the estimates. Related to some of your other queries, I think there is and I'll let, quite frankly, and I'll beg your indulgence, Chair, because our head of cybersecurity is vastly experienced, and she's brought us from a place of deep immaturity to not where we want to be, but in a better position than we were certainly a year ago. And that's really around the mindset of resilience in a changing economy where we don't want to go back to everything being paper-based, because that's slow, that doesn't advance us where we want to be. We want to be able to have the speed and comfort of using things. That comes with advantages and disadvantages. It comes with risks. And the risk involved, like anything else, crossing the road, building a house, leaving your house in the morning, you have to manage those risks. So you don't not make decisions because you have risks. You make smart decisions and put safeguards in place so that the risk that you encounter will be well managed. That's why we have indicators, right? And that's why we slow down. That's why we have a horn, so that we can manage the process of the risk around us when we're traveling on the roads. And cybersecurity is a much exaggerated version of that risk mitigation. Now, the difficulty is that this has been a topic that's been part of our conversation for not a short period of time. As long as we've had the internet or advanced computer systems 20, 30 years ago, we've been talking about cybersecurity. But to the minister's point, the scale and the pace of the potential threats has certainly increased. With the level of threat actors that we have, with the level of AI, the level of disaggregated tools available to people all over the world, you have reached a point in time where, you know, every single day you have to be in the business of protection, just like how you have to be in the business of physical protection every single day. So what we've done is that we've created a start point that is getting more solid by the day to be able to defend Barbados's infrastructure and people's peace of mind on an individualized basis. And so I'll let Patricia Roseal, our head of cybersecurity, speak a little bit more about what we've done over the last year.
Patricia Roseal, Chief Information Security Officer. So within the last year, we would have taken a step back, look at our infrastructure, understand what our cybersecurity posture was. That led us to changing our whole focus. That focus then was centralized on working with international, worldwide partners, best-in-class, worldwide partners, best-in-class partners, to help us frame out how we are going to do this protection. From a government perspective, the cybersecurity environment posture was maturing. So we had to have a number of tactics in place simultaneously. So we have developed and we are currently rolling out what I call our perimeter protection. So we are rolling out our SIM, which is our Security Information Event Management System, which is managed by our SOC on our CSERT. And
What are those? You're using acronyms.
okay, I'll go again. Our SIM, which is our Security Information Event Management System. That system allows us to collect logs from all infrastructure components and applications within the environment. And using AI and other machine learning techniques, it helps us to determine whether or not we are exposed to threats, whether or not there are threats within our environment, and it also helps us to determine how best we deal with it in the shortest possible time. So we are rolling that out now. We have a number of ministries and SOEs on board, and we're continuing that process. We are also signing up, which is our big perimeter defense mechanism, which is our, looking for a web proxy in simple form. So what that does is control any data coming in or any data leaving our environment. And we've started a project to roll that out. Simultaneously, we are working on developing our policies and standards because there were not sufficient standards and policies in place to guide our construction of information technology. So we're working on those standards, and we anticipate that they should be out within by the end of April. And then we would have to do an educational process across government to help people to understand the policies and standards, help them to implement them, help them to determine what are their gap analyses, help them to determine what gaps they may have from these standards. So a considerable amount of work has gone in, and we have a lot more to go because when we looked at where we were a couple of years behind where we ought to be, and so we have to catch up and then move forward because without a solid, mature cybersecurity posture, we will not be able to deliver on all the digital transformations that we're hoping to do, because then we will be exposing ourselves to attacks via malware or whatever, because the threat actors out there are not asleep. They're very busy. And within recent times, they have been focusing on the Latin America, Caribbean region, and they will be exploiting us. So we have to make sure that we're able to prevent what I call hygiene type attacks, basic attacks. We should be able to prevent those. We're not going to be able to prevent everything, The ones that we can't prevent, we will have to be able to detect them. And once we have detected them, we must have a well-rehearsed process to defending against them. And so we are building this process. It's going to take time. Coupled with that, which is critical and important, is the competencies, the skill sets, and the manpower. There is a great need for cybersecurity manpower all over the world. It's not only in Barbados. And so these skill sets and the manpower tend to be a little bit more costly, well, expensive. And so we're also working with a number of our world-renowned partners to build out this. We've had conversations with the UWI in terms of developing some courses for students there so that we can have a cadre of graduates leaving the university with some exposure and details into cybersecurity, so we will continue that. And we have 2 partners who are working with us on that, and hopefully shortly we will be able to start seeing students going through that cybersecurity training. Thank you.
Chair, through you, I just want to say, and not to embarrass Ms. Roseal, but part of the increased level of maturity has been largely down to her leadership in the area. She previously was head of security, digital security for Caribbean Bank, and we managed to persuade her to assist us with the maturing of our product. And so a lot of the work to get us to the state of, again, we're not doing any parades. We're not a place where we want to be, but we are certainly stronger than we were a year ago, and there's much more to get done. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank you for the work, and much more work to come.
Thank you for your answers, Minister. You seem to have a very good hold on the resilience needed to ensure that these threats of malware and other network threats could be mitigated by your ministry. And I thank you for having put measures in place to do that. But there's equally another threat, not from malicious software, but from malicious behaviors. And I know that through the same house, the same august chamber that you sit in, we would have passed cybersecurity protective legislation, which not only passed the local test after investigative examinations, but indeed it passed the international digital test when it was tested away from these shores. I want you to tell Barbadians the importance of having this type of legislation, how important it is to your ministry and to Barbadians in general, because oftentimes we hear about maladaptive practices in the digital sphere and practices that can destroy lives as we know it and the quality of life. And that is what is a serious, in my mind, deterrent for persons using this particular platform. So probably you can give us a date where the legislation is at and how important it is to have this type of legislation being involved in protecting this whole digital sphere. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Minister. So, as I confessed earlier, I'm very much an optimist around technology, and that optimism doesn't, however, blind me to the downsides of it. And the reality is that AI and other technological tools really advance the level of good somebody can do, and quite frankly, can advance the level of the bad people can do. You can significantly scale malicious intent. You can significantly scale bad intent in a way that perhaps couldn't have happened 2-3 years ago, far less 10 years ago. And so, innocent people need protection from that, and innocent people need tools to be able to detect when that happens, as well as the state on their behalf protect them from that. So one of those powerful tools is really truthfully around legislation, right? So we were asked a question by Minister Ishmael regarding CEDA And so I want to connect those together. That part of the ministry's mandate, as I mentioned it initially, is to drive the legislative agenda in concert with the development path that we're on. And so over the course of the next year, we'll have to do a significant update of critical legislative infrastructure that reflects where the country is and where it wants to be. And one of those things is going to be related to cybercrime. Now, cybercrime is a complicated thing because it's related to not just cybersecurity and digital defense and all those things. It pertains to fraud, it pertains to malactions, it pertains to a bunch of different things that get a little bit more complicated. And so I don't want to muddle the two things together. But you have our assurance that it is very much top of a priority for the ministry to bring back to Parliament for the purpose of enacting legislation that strengthens individual protection around those areas. Ms. Rosil, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about your detection tools regarding instances around fraud and all those other things from your experience as well.
Well, part of what we are currently implementing is a tool. The tool that what are the tools that we're implementing? Would be able to, how do I put it? We'll be able to look at persons' behaviors. So based on the activities that an individual would have normally done, like the time of the day, the particular store that they go to, it will be able to tell if a particular activity from an individual is anomalous, and so it would flag it as something that needs to be further investigated. So for example, if I were sitting in the office and I decided that I was going to send an email to somebody in Timbuktu, and I was not customary sending emails to that individual in Timbuktu at 2 o'clock in the morning from the office, then that transaction will be flagged as being abnormal, and we'll be able then to get it investigated further to see if it was a real transaction or if it was a fraudulent transaction. So there are a number of tools that we are going to be integrating within the ecosystem that will help us to understand and determine fraudulent behavior or just unusual behavior. However, as the minister mentioned, we would have to make sure that the legal standard is there to make some of those determinations.
Minister, can you give us a time frame when we expect to have the cybercrime legislation brought back and be enforced, so Barbadians will have this level of comfort?
Minister, you're pinning me down to a specific time, and it is certainly within the agenda of the first half of this year. I'll put it that way.
Thanks, Chair, that's all.
Honourable Member for St. Michael Central.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you, and good afternoon to the Minister and all of the members of the Ministry. I want to say that this is definitely an exciting time to be alive, and certainly an exciting time to be a part of the government, especially because we're really and truly embracing the whole notion of really being a part of the 21st century. I'm seeing that the Ministry, through its various initiatives, is guiding Barbados towards becoming a fully digital society, where technology enhances the public services, drives innovation, and expands economic opportunity for our people. So I'm grateful to you for that. But as we are moving forward and modernizing this beautiful country, I want to make sure that we're not leaving persons behind and communities behind. And as I'm always the champion for the small man, especially because of the constituency that I represent, the question is, given that all Barbadians do not have equal access to reliable internet or digital tools, what steps is the Ministry taking to ensure that digital transformation does not exclude the vulnerable or rural communities?
Thank you for that question. And it's one that we think a lot about. And I spoke earlier about the idea of being measured on the basis of impact in real persons' lives. Last year, for instance, one of the things that we set out to do was drive a new level of sophistication in Barbados' telecommunication infrastructure by introducing 5G technology, for instance. And so both of your major providers have rolled it out within last year. And the impact on that, of course, is that you want to be able to allow anyone, wherever they may be across the country, to always be connected and therefore not be disadvantaged about going about their day-to-day lives. We have an interesting problem in Barbados, if I get more specific, where you have this high penetration of smartphones, but the truth is that we don't really use the smartphones in a very dynamic way, quite frankly, right? So we have the devices, but we don't optimize the usage of the devices because people are effectively using it for WhatsApp or making calls. We have set about a ambitious agenda, and I'm going to let the CEO of GovTech speak a little bit more about it, where our intention is to digitize the services that government, the public, provides to people. And their interaction with a digitally enabled society means that the day-to-day things that they want to get done, whether it's certificates or whether it's license or whether it's whatever things they want to get done, they can now do at the touch of a device. Now that device has to be things that they know how to use, as well as they feel comfortable and safe to use in. And in addition to that, it has to be readily available wherever they are. So Mark, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about that, and then I could just wrap up at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mark Boyce, CEO of GovTech Barbados. Thank you very much for the question. As government services become more digital, it's essential that we not leave people behind. Not everyone, as you've pointed out, will have the same access to technology or the same digital skills or the same level of comfort using online services. That is why our approach at GovTech will be digital first, but not digital only. So using digital where it works best, while continuing to support people through other channels. So for some people, that means completing the service completely online. For others, it might mean being able to book an appointment online or receiving clear information about which office you have to go to and when. We're also designing services to be accessible and simple to use, those that are online, for people with disabilities, for older citizens, and for those using mobile devices that might have slower internet connections, for example. As I said, we'll continue to support in-person and assisted channels so that citizens can receive help at government offices or through staff who guide them through the process. So the goal is not simply to digitize services, but to make them easier and more accessible for everyone. And that means making the service end-to-end better, whether it occurs online or in person.
And just to expand and come back on that point, I think one of the really critical learning lessons and examples that we took from this approach is really what Rwanda has done, which is acknowledged widely as this incredibly digitally advanced small state, right? Larger than us, but it's 5 million people, so small nation. And they wanted to leapfrog their development by using advanced technologies in the way that Singapore does. So they've basically taken up the Singapore model, but have used it for their purposes. And critical to them is really the advancement of citizen experience using technology. So they have a cadre of digital ambassadors or of spaces where people can have learning sessions on how to use the tools to make their lives better. So citizens are at the center, and my human experience is at the center of the digital experience. You don't just get a platform, or you don't just get a device, or you don't just get an app, or you just don't get a process where there's not a human involved in the process. The point of it is not the vanity of saying that you have something that is technologically advanced. The point of it is how do you make the human experience better as a result of technology being used? And that's really fundamental to the ethos of our approach. So the intention is, as a society, we have advanced and done well because we've thought of the entire country. One of the things I love the most about Barbados, quite frankly, is wherever you are the island, from one point to another point, is the same bus fare, right? So no part of the country, no citizen is withheld from the ability to move around their state. Our digital transformation has to have that same ethos, and it will.
Thank you. So a follow-up to that then would be, so we're talking about the learning sessions. Would the ministry be willing and available to come into St. Michael Central then, for example, and have a teaching session for example, to the seniors who may not know how to use the technology, so that we can protect them from all the fraud and everything else that's happening online right now?
Absolutely. The minute you ask me, it will be done.
I'm happy to hear that. Another follow-up then would be, are there any plans, does the ministry have any plans to expand the public Wi-Fi access points or the community technology centers? Because, for example, in my constituency, we have the e-learning, now we have e-commerce, and then we have all these e-things, but the persons may not have the technology or the Wi-Fi to access them. So to ensure that we have equality, are we going to be expanding those access points?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. I mean, the fundamental reality of where the economy is going is your ability to have access to internet is going to be paramount to your ability to do transactions. When things like BIMPay, for instance, come on board, or Pearly, or any of those digitally advanced tools that are helpful for people's lives, if you are not connected to those things, you can't do the transaction. So part of our work in science and technology and research is around the advancement of 5G technologies that makes it easier for expanding the reach of the average person to have internet, as well as secured services for internet for some secured services, but going beyond town centers and then going deeper into parish-based spots for high-quality internet services so people can access is fundamental for us.
So then my final follow-up would be, are there any plans for the Andrew Allen Community Center, which is my community center in Station Hill, in order to make that community center one of those access points, or even have public Wi-Fi?
So I can't speak to specific community center, but I am assuming when you call and you ask for your specific thing, your constituency, that will be on a list, and we'll find a way to make it happen.
I will hold you to that, Minister.
And my team heard you, so.
And we have witnesses, Minister. Thank you. I yield back, Chair.
Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
I am happy to learn that for the first time, perhaps in the history of Barbados, and I shouldn't say it's the first time, but what I should say is that traditionally, innovation have not started in the rural spaces. I think of the introduction of water to Barbados, running water, and that would have started back in 1857, the laying of the Bill Hayne Parliament, and it took another 30 years or so before somebody found it necessary to introduce water into the rural spaces. So I know that we have traditionally not gotten anything first. So to know or to learn that a data center is coming to St. Andrew or coming to the rural parts of Scotland district, and this will be the first for Barbados, is certainly good and welcome news. But I would want to know, because I will be the first to admit that I do not know a lot, if anything at all, about data centers and the purpose of this kind of technological infrastructure. But it certainly sounds like something that would benefit the country, and it certainly sounds like something that would benefit St. Andrew or the rural spaces. I want you, Minister, or your team, to explain to me exactly why your ministry felt the need at this time to establish or to build out this infrastructure here in Barbados, as a first question.
Thank you, Minister, for that. Maybe it's my personal bias, because I'm a country boy myself, that I think one of the things that we, as small island developing states, do not think about is the development and the evolution of our rural economies. And the rural economies must reflect the beauty of the spaces and what is unique about those spaces. If there's a moment, Mr. Hill can expound more regarding our plans for not only St. Andrew, but St. Joseph's and Lucy, the idea of thinking of specification around building up a biogas plant using the excess amounts of coconuts in St. Joseph, or thinking about the industrial space in St. Lucie, or thinking about St. Thomas, for instance, where one of the digitization center, which is under Mrs. mandate, sits, so therefore creating an innovation hub in St. Thomas, et cetera, et cetera. And my friends from St. George are here, so I'm not making sure I don't leave out the things that we're going to do with St. George. But the idea is that how can we spread around even development across the entire country? So the advancement of the rural economy is paramount in our thought. I'm going to ask Chelsea Bradford to speak a little bit more about the specification of the data center as she leads out part of that project.
Thank you, Minister and Chair. Chelsea Brathwaite, Program Manager for Amini. So largely just to break down the idea of the data center. So as you know, for many years, much of our records are paper-based records and systems. They're stored in vaults for security, physical vaults. So the idea is that as we move now to this era of digitization, where we're digitizing everything, we need a secure place to store them. So you could think of it as a vault, but for digital assets. At present, we kind of host these things on third-party service providers, cloud services that are outside of the island. And in this case, I mean, it has two implications. First, we are paying foreign companies to store data, which has foreign exchange leaving the country. But at the same time, any data stored outside the island will be subject to laws and systems outside of Barbados for data protection. Of course, the Data Protection Commissioner could speak more on this. But to address this whole idea of data sovereignty, we want to ensure that we have this data as we digitize it stored here. So we are working, you would have heard CEO Hill earlier speak to the center that's going to be in your constituency. And the idea would be to establish that part for the country to be able to host the systems, the data there, as well as the compute and the energy infrastructure required to power the applications that are going to live on top of the system. So you could think of the data center more or less as the railway needed to kind of get us going, get all these applications, these tools and stuff needed for the government and for the citizens to benefit, but in such a way that we still maintain our sovereignty. And already we would have taken some steps to do that. So we do have a small, so to speak, server, 0.1 megawatt, coming onshore on island to kind of help with this process, where we start with some of the digitized records like cabinet and so on. So we've already started the process, but speaking largely, as CEO Hill explained, the idea is that the bigger part, the data center part, would be hosted in your constituency, and that speaks to the need for it more or less. And then, of course, for your constituency, CEO Hill could speak largely to how that would bring jobs and other factors. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to end at 2 points just to wrap up, Chair, if you don't mind. One is, I mean, just the same way that as a sovereign country, you want your own airport and your own seaport, data centers are going to be part of the infrastructure that you see yourself as a sovereign state having to be able to run your digital capabilities, your economy, everything requires the compute and storage capacity for you to run your own affairs, right? So fundamentally, I think that's just the core way to look at it. And there are lots of technical terms, there are lots of things that obviously are steeped in engineering or computer science, but at the core of it is that you have functions that you need to do, so you need to own your own, just like you own your own port, your own water plant, your own highway, you own those things, and so you're going to need to own your own digital infrastructure. That's one. And then, you know, it's important for us to understand that not only is it to house our infrastructure, it's also for us to make commercial profit off it, right? That you can create capacity where you can on-sell to other commercial entities, Barbadian and non-Barbadian, to generate revenue from advanced infrastructure. So our vision for it is that it not only becomes something that's a cost, but quite frankly, the vision for it is that it's going to be a high-level revenue generator for the country. Because we have a high level of infrastructure that our competitors and our neighboring states don't have, and they'll be using our services to be able to manage theirs as well, because we make the strategic investment at this time. So we have grand ambition around it.
spaces. But we also know that that part of Barbados is seen as a pristine part of Barbados, extensive flora and fauna. So I would want to know what impact the building out of this facility would have on the flora and the fauna. And I'm asking if this was taken into consideration. I know that you'll be producing a tremendous amount of power. I see you mentioned 5 megawatts with the ability to scale up to 20 megawatts. I am sure there are persons in Barbados who, when they hear those types of terms, it makes absolute sense to them, and they know what that means. But what I want to know is the impact of this park, this technology, this infrastructure on the environment in that rural part of Barbados.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that, Minister, because to expand on the point made earlier regarding the focus on rural economy and rural districts, is that I think you have to be very cognizant of what a space is, and you optimize what a space is, and not try to transform it to something that is not. The distinct advantage of St. Andrew area is because of the natural habitat, its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, which is a huge generator, for instance, of immense power that obviously is unutilized with the ocean space, right? You have this huge fall off of 1,000 feet. I think my former Minister of Environment knows this even better than I do, a fall up of space from the Atlantic shelf dropping down, which makes it highly valuable for things that such as ocean thermal energy, right? So you have distinct advantages of St. Andrew being St. Andrew, and you want it to stay that way. You're not trying to develop into something that is not. So the vision of it, and CEO Hill can go a little bit further if necessary, is really to create a park that is idealistic. It is beautiful, it is green by its nature, and you're optimizing the fact that it is green to attract business to the space. So the energy created is green. How we facilitate and we take advantage of the trees and the natural fauna is advantage that we want to keep, not something that we want to dilute. The idea of growing flowers in a space and the space is then optimized through greenhouses specifically designed to have more flowers being grown is paramount to how we think about it. How do we manage the distance and safety from anyone around it so there's no disturbance to life is a strong part of the consideration. How do we then connect to the Costa Edwards Primary School that's just down the road, and then the Allen School is just down the road, and you create an ecosystem where talent could then go towards work in the center, and you create hundreds of jobs potentially, are things that we are thinking about constantly. And of course, once you being obviously the representative for the area, we will be in deep consultation with you on every single component of it. But our vision is very much to advance the nature of the space and advance the advantages of what the space is without doing anything that's destructive to the experience of being there for persons who live there or persons who are visiting as a whole. CEO Hill, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Thanks, Minister. Yeah, what I want to underscore is that, parishes like St. Philip play a very important role in space exploration. St. John, the first Earth station, was based in St. John to unlock Barbados' ability to communicate via satellite. So St. Andrew is this, particularly around Greenland, is this in this zone that really allows for high levels of security and at the same time high levels of environmental resilience. So as the minister pointed out, pretty much we're using the Greenland facility that was earmarked primarily for some other purpose, and we're repurposing it for data, right? So therefore, there's an enhancement in the use of that facility, which is currently there. So all that power that we spoke about will be located at that site, and the site is now repurposed now for data and digital development. Now, what we have is an arrangement also with a company out of Kenya, where they will be off taking the cut flowers that is growing under the solar panels as an additional export into the European market. So we're not just pairing it with just hardcore data and digital infrastructure. It is merging digital and biological opportunities so that the folks in St. John can benefit significantly. So we're talking about anthuriums, ginger lilies, roses, those types of things will be grown under the solar panels so that we're creating jobs in the community and at the same time providing Barbados with the AI infrastructure that it needs to move forward. Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm glad you mentioned jobs because that was going to be my very next question, but I think Minister alluded to it, and then you also made mention of it. I know that you say you've started the work, you've started the initial work, because I imagine this would a project that would be built up over a period of time. Now, this is exciting news, and I would want to know if there's anything else in the pipeline similar to this that's going to come into any part of the rural spaces, certainly any part of St. Andrew that you would want to share. I know, you know, in terms of the plans for the ministry for further development of that area.
So, not to, and I live in your constituency too, so, you know, but not to only focus on St. Andrew. I think it's important for CEO Hill to share some of our thoughts in general regarding the urban economy development and other areas. But as I alluded to before, you have a reality of the country being a small one, right? So 166 square miles, where there are distinct advantages that are geographic, that you can optimize something that is new to the space, but highly valuable. And that's why I really want to stress on, for instance, the power of thinking about the place that once we drive past, and my 14-year-old daughter always says, you know, when we go to St. Andrew, the sea doesn't cool out, right? There's this incredible amount of energy being generated there, but we're not optimizing it, right? So how do we optimize it in a way that certainly doesn't take away from the beauty of the space, but that power then could be used to develop Barbadians and make Barbadian lives better? Those are the things that we want to figure out. In the case of St. Joseph, for instance, Mark, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more, or what you're thinking regarding that.
So in the St. Joseph case, we have been sponsored by the Indian government the sum of $1 million for coconut processing to HACCP certified standards. So the equipment comes in to make sure that the water that is produced in Barbados is to HACCP standards, and they're providing all the equipment. Now, the best place to locate that is to decentralize into the East Corridor around St. Joseph, St. John, and St. Thomas, and Scotland District, because that is where the coconuts are produced. So from a logistics standpoint, if we move coconuts from the country, from that East Corridor, to move it to the south at Newton, to then move it back to the East Corridor for processing, you're pretty much wasting logistics space. So locating now the coconut hub in the St. Joseph Belt, where the coconut nursery is located, where the coconuts are being grown, allows us now to build out that industry and create that corridor around alternative bioeconomy activities, additional biohydrogen opportunities, additional renewable energy opportunities, and pretty much another green zone within that, around the coconut shells. Now, the equipment that coming in is not only for water, but we're actually taking the shells, defibering the shells, and making fabrics, plant pots. So again, these are new jobs for persons in St. Joseph. We've been doing some tours. We saw the youngsters picking coconuts and interacting with them. So we know that there's that capacity for significant levels of jobs in that St. Joseph Belt around the coconut industry. And the coconut tree is a very, very important tree in Barbados. It's resilient. It has multiple purposes, from water to food to oil, through to fabrics, through to furniture. And we therefore need to capitalize around this hub, around this center, and build now in St. Joseph, St. John, the Scotland District area, to create more jobs again. Minister, thanks.
Chair, to you.
Oh, thank you, Minister. I actually have another question, but when you said standards, I was
Honourable
trying to...
member, you have the other question in the second round. Thank
No,
you.
I was making that point that I suspect that it will constitute a second
That's
question.
okay, honourable member.
And not a follow-on question.
That's okay.
But thank you, I yield back.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
Wait a second.
The question is, I do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
As reported progress and request leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:35 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2:35 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:35 p.m.